Violence breaks out in Washington between pro- and anti-Erdogan demonstrators as the Turkish president arrives to meet Donald Trump at the White House. And allegations that Donald Trump asked former FBI Chief James Comey to end an investigation into the former U.S. National Security Advisor creates controversy, with 33 Democrats calling for an investigation into the president's actions. Also this hour, protesters fearing for their jobs occupy a French factory and threaten to blow it up as they demand action from the country's new president, Emmanuel Macron.
Macron has presented himself as a president with a new policy, and now we're waiting to see these changes.
Hello, welcome to RT International Live from Moscow, just gone midday now in the Russian capital. I'm Daniel Hawkins. You're very welcome with us this hour. The arrival of Turkish President Recep Erdogan in the American capital has been met with protests. Violence broke out in Washington between his supporters and those opposing him, leaving 9 people injured after Erdogan met with Donald Trump. Well, despite the scenes outside the White House, those inside seemed in a good mood. During a joint media conference, President Trump said the US and Turkey have a great relationship and will strive to make it even better. But the two countries have faced a number of challenges to their alliance in recent times. Miguel Francis Santiago has more.
Prior to their meeting, Trump and Erdogan both have expressed high hopes for their get-together. But what's the milestone, and what cooperation are we talking about? Because remember, Turkey wants to convince Washington to stop supporting its enemies, while the U.S. stands firm by still viewing the Syrian and Iraqi Kurds as its strongest partners against Islamic State. Turkey, though, doesn't see a difference between the two.
Adı ne olursa olsun.
Whatever their names are, whether PKK, YPG, PYD or Daesh, all of them are terror organizations. They are death machines.
We should be using the Kurdish, we should be arming the Kurdish.
Whatever the reason is, it's not something that is acceptable to our friend and NATO ally.
They've proven to be the best fighters. They've really proven to be the most loyal to us.
The US is cooperating with one terror organization in order to destroy another one.
And we should be working with them much more so than we're working.
And looks like this rift has only been deepening. Last month, Turkey bombed Kurdish positions in Syria and Iraq. U.S. infuriated, blames Turkey for compromising the anti-terror fight, and even deploys troops to the Turkish-Syrian border to prevent direct confrontation. Now, just last week, Trump approves a Pentagon plan to provide heavy weapons to the Kurds. And that, of course, in turn, infuriates Ankara. Turkish foreign minister says that, quote, every weapon the Kurds obtain is a threat to Turkey. So while Washington struggles to find any type of compromise between the two of its allies, it's already been receiving threats from both of them. Calls have emerged in Turkey to expel the whopping 2,500 U.S. troops from the Incirlik air base, while the Kurds are also threatening Washington with quitting the fight against ISIL unless U.S. protects them from the Turks. They're even saying that they're not anyone's stick to beat around with. So no matter how well both countries wield their diplomacy towards each other, this just might be one dead end they'll keep struggling with. Miguel Francis Santiago, RT.
And we did get expert opinion on the role of the Kurds in relations between Turkey and the United States.
Donald Trump will not change his mind that YPG is for him not a terrorist organization, and Turkey is not going to change the view that YPG is a terrorist organization, but it will kept further the discussions and the talks. Turkey and America remain in this part of the world also as two allies fighting Daesh together.
The Turks, for that matter, have really not engaged in the fight against ISIS. You know, they've really been trying to put down the rebels more than defeat ISIS. In exchange, using ISIS as a pawn, and using them as leverage.
Turkish president first time, I would say, meeting him, but he was bringing the Turkish demands, Turkish expectations, and now the ball is on the American side. How far they can fulfill the Turkish expectations is an open question, but America cannot exclude Turkey neither from its regional nor global politics.
The burden is on the Turks, not on the U.S., to show their faithfulness to NATO and to show that they're a good ally. I mean, look, there's plenty of evidence that the Turkish authorities under President Erdogan have worked very closely with the Islamic Republic of Iran. We know that the Turks were buying oil pumped from ISIS-controlled regions of Syria. So I think it's really, the burden is on President Erdogan to show good faith and to stop dealing stop playing with fire vis-a-vis the Islamic State and the Islamic Republic of Iran, and to show that he's a good ally of NATO.
Donald Trump is facing another firestorm in the media after the New York Times and CNN ran stories saying the president tried to shut down an active investigation. The latest allegations say Trump asked former FBI Director James Comey to stop looking at the accusations of ties between Russia and his previous National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. That was, of course, back in February. U.S. Democrats have been quick to round on the president.
I was shaken by the report in the New York Times that alleged that the president tried to shut down an active FBI investigation into a close political associate. The country is being tested in unprecedented ways.
Well, I think we ought to ask the director to come in to testify. I think that ought to be the first step. We ought to ask if there are notes. Notes that are taken around the time of the conversation would be, I think, very powerful evidence of what took place during those conversations.
The White House has denied the accusations in a statement, but 33 Democratic Congress members are calling for an investigation into the claims against Donald Trump. RT America's Ed Schultz discussed the ins and outs of what possible investigation with special guests as impeachment calls grow in the United States.
But clearly we're on the trail there to an impeachment.
I think we're in impeachment territory now for the first time.
This made me truly go back to look at the Nixon impeachment papers. And when I went back to see exactly what Congress said that President Nixon did, it is almost like President Trump read the impeachment papers and now he's following it like it's a reality show script.
No, I don't take it seriously at all. I don't trust Comey's memory at this point. I watched him a week and a half ago go into great detail about Huma Abedin sending 100,000 emails to Anthony Weiner. It turned out it never happened. He was totally wrong about that.
That is exactly why he wrote a memo, so that his memory could be believed later on, because I'm sure that the outcome was so preposterous that he was not hearing what he thought that he was hearing, and in fact he did share it with other people within the FBI for this exact purpose.
There's going to be a call for memos, there's going to be a call for tapes, and it would seem to me that Congress would want to get on the record with the former FBI director ASAP. Where does this leave Republicans?
Oh, I think Republicans want to go after Donald Trump as well as Democrats. Washington, the swamp, it's like a bucking bronco trying to throw Trump off their back. They want him out. They want to send a message to any other outsider. Don't come into this system.
It doesn't end there for the White House. It has also had to respond to allegations that Trump shared highly classified information with Russian officials at a meeting in the Oval Office. Here's what the U.S. National Security Advisor had to say about those claims.
The premise of that article is false, that in any way the president had a conversation that was inappropriate, totally appropriate for the president to share whatever information, wholly appropriate, which was wholly appropriate what the expectations are of our intelligence partners. And none of us felt in any way that that conversation was inappropriate.
Well, President Trump took to Twitter to give his perspective too. He said he'd information he wanted to share with Russia and that he had every right to do so. According to him, it would enable Russia to more effectively target ISIL. Now, Trump's comments didn't seem to quell the ensuing media storm. Some U.S. media outlets are now suggesting that the sensitive information Trump disclosed was released by Israel. And the source for that, however, is unnamed. But that's not all, though, as the Washington Post was also responsible for a leak of sorts without even realizing it.
Cold word means like the vital aspects of the story have to be replaced with other words. You have to say things like, the package has been delivered. The squirrel is in the basket. The idiot is in the oval.
The reports out tonight are that it was Trump himself, not his staff, driving this crisis with the odd disclosure of classified material to Russian adversaries.
How can you let highly classified information fall into the hands of Donald Trump?
Workers at a car factory in central France, fearing for their jobs and the site's closure, are now threatening to blow up the whole facility. They've been occupying it now for 7 days. They're demanding that the country's newly elected president, Emmanuel Macron, intervene to keep it open. He's not visited the site and has spent the past week meeting with foreign officials. He even found time for a drink with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Charlotte Dubinsky was there for us when the protests first began.
Right behind me is a liquid air gas canister, and if you read on it, it says, "We are ready to blow it up."
We already have a bomb with a detonator over there.
This is the factory floor, and right underneath where I am is a pool of oil that spreads all around the factory.
The fuel that is below us will burn.
It could destroy the factory.
The automatic press would be destroyed. Everything would be destroyed and burned for several days.
We are too old to find work. If they give us no work, we are dead.
The situation is appearing increasingly tense. Charlotte has returned to the factory again to get the latest updates.
This was once a busy factory with hundreds of people working day in, day out. But as you can see now, it's closed down, and instead the factory workers are sitting here day after day trying to find out if there is any hope of salvaging their jobs here at the factory. Around 280 are under threat, and they're getting angry. That anger has already bubbled over, with the factory workers destroying some of the machines here in preparation for this full-time closure, and they've also booby-trapped the factory. Just take a look at this. This is an air liquid tank, and they have got a booby trap on that.
We are furious. We always did everything to satisfy our clients. Now we see that it was for no reason.
We've seen an industrial catastrophe over the past few years. We've been holding marches but have got nothing, and here we are again in the streets. Macron has presented himself as a president with a new policy, and now we're waiting to see these changes.
We're angry. We worked here, and now they just don't need us. We're here for nothing. Of course we're angry.
They've been protesting for the last few days after months and months of negotiations have failed to secure the plant. They've received welcome visits from two important politicians, Monsieur Poutot and Monsieur Mélenchon, both who were candidates in the first round of the French presidential election.
Macron could pick up the phone. He has contacts with shareholders in Renault. He could amend the law, give the order, but he doesn't do anything.
Hundreds of people have joined the protesters in solidarity over their fears of losing their job. They want Mr. Macron to do something immediately, but many are afraid that he will do nothing.
We did contact the office of Emmanuel Macron for comment on the situation, but have received no response so far. Well, gunmen in Afghanistan have stormed a state-owned TV station. We've got the latest on that developing story right after this short break. See you in just a moment.